In this video, I'm going to show you how to do input and output in C++. We'll start with just a little bit of output, and then I'll come back to output again. So when you load a program or start a new program, you always get a Hello World example, and I'm going to briefly discuss what that does. So let's run it first. So to run a program, we come up here to the Build and Run icon, which is the gear and the right green arrow. Click it, and it'll compile. Takes it a minute to run, especially the first time. And if you look, there's Hello World on the screen. So how did it get there? Well, it got there for a couple of reasons, or in a couple of ways. First of all, the way we got it on the screen was we told the compiler that we wanted to output something to the screen, and that's cout. Call it a command or an operation. We followed cout with the output operator, the two less than signs, followed by the string hello world, followed by another output operator, and then the new line character end L, which just drops it down to the next line, the cursor. We didn't have to do that. We could have just stopped at hello world, and then of course we have the semicolon. Now let me back up. To get there, to be able to use cout exists in a library, and we needed to bring that library in. The library is called IOStream. And to bring it into my program, I have to write what's called a #include statement, or a preprocessor directive, which is this line right here. #include IOStream, and notice that IOStream goes in angle brackets. Follow that with this using namespace standard std. I won't go into a lot of detail about what namespaces do right now. We'll talk about that later in the course. But just know that to use cout, I really need to include at least this part, and I'm going to always include the namespace or use the namespace std. If I didn't do that, then I would have to put the namespace in front of cout and endl every time, like this. And that's a lot of extra cognitive overload, so I'm going to take it out, and we'll always just have #include IOStream using namespace standard. So cout is our object for output, with the output operator and then the string or whatever data we want to output. That's how we do it. So with that in mind, let's back up and let's look at input. So we do input using a similar object called cin, but first let me set it up here. All right, so let's create a variable, and then let's prompt the user to enter a name. And then we're going to say hello to that name, and I just made a little mistake. Whoops, there we go. Okay. So notice what happens. We declare a variable, prompt the user. I'm going to talk about that again in a second. Get the input from the user using cin. Cin, what happens then is, watch, let's run the program. Cin is going to display the prompt, or not, well, the program displays the prompt, and cin is going to stop with the cursor right there, waiting for the user to enter their name. So I'll enter my name, then I'll hit enter. Oh, you see what happened? It says hello Mike right together. So I made a tiny little mistake, but that's okay. Let's fix that real quick. There we go. Run it again. Type in my name. Hello Mike. Simple enough. This works with numbers just as well. Let's change the program. I will not reveal my real age here, but oops, keep doing that. And what I'm doing here is I'm also demonstrating how to combine variables with strings in cout statements like I've just done there. So now we create a new variable age, prompt the user, how old are you, get the name in, or I'm sorry, get the age in, and then display the age. So let's run that little program. I'll lie and say I'm 25. If you can't see that, let me put it in the screen a little closer. Okay. So what I've just done is I have just created something called, or demonstrated something called a template. And this particular template is called prompt then read. And you should always learn there's all these basic things that you do in programs all the time. And one of the things we always do in input is we prompt the user to enter something, then we read the input from the user. And so that's what we're doing right there, is we're prompting the user, how are you? Then we're reading their name, CNH. Now in this case I also output, but we'll talk about that in a separate video. So those are the main techniques for getting data in and getting data out. And let me show you one more thing. Let's go back to our name program again. Make it a little more user-friendly. This time I'm going to put in my complete name and watch what happens. Notice what happened, it did not get my last name. That is because the space is what's called a delimiter, and so when the compiler saw the space in Mike space McMillan, it immediately said, okay, the input stopped at Mike because of space, and so that's what got recorded in the variable name was just Mike. We can fix that very easily by using a special function called Getline. This function takes two arguments, the cin object and the variable you want to store your data in, and then when you run it, so now when I type, I get exactly what I wanted. So to summarize, we've learned two ways to do input and output. Cin to get data into a program, cout to get data out of the program, and then we also learned about Getline for when you have a string or any time data is separated with, or has spaces in it, you're going to want to use Getline, but especially with strings, and almost only with strings, to get data out. So that wraps up this video, and thanks for watching.